Good morning, y'all. It's been a while, but I finally got around to popping in on YouTube to go over one of those lovely Watchtower publications, because they really went there. I'm pretty sure we've all seen the Australian Royal Commission, where I like to call St. Angus Stewart, really tried to give Jeffrey Jackson an out. Tried to give him an escape route. The man decided, Jeffrey Jackson, to be a fool. They were going to stick by their guns. I guess, because he kind of skated around this whole suggestion. Let's talk about that suggestion real quick. In Deuteronomy 22, verse 25 through 27, there is an exception to typical evidence requirements as established in the Bible, as there should be. Sorry about the light, guys. I'm so sick of trying to do this video over. So, I'm sure we all know by this point that adultery and fornication were punishable by stoning to death in biblical times. Like, being involved in this stuff was deadly. But there was a way around that, because somebody in their infinite wisdom finally realized sometimes you aren't really a willing participant. So in Deuteronomy, we're going to change up the words a little bit to assailant and assault and victim rather than the real things, because the point is not to try and trigger people. So if you were assaulted in the city, it's assumed that somebody is going to be around to hear a cry for help. I'm not saying that that's the way it works, because we all know that, the body's response to stress is not something that we can readily control in every single instance, and being in this situation is traumatic. Dissociation is a thing, but that all aside, it was assumed that somebody would be there to hear your cry for help. So, if they had reason to believe that you did not scream when someone tried to assault you, you were probably a willing participant. Not that that's right, but basically you were complicit in your crime. If you did scream, you were not a willing participant. You wanted help. You did not want to be in that situation, and an individual became an assailant who was forcing you to take part in the sin. It was not of your own choosing. You cannot be an assailant. Well, I'm finding it really hard to be an assailant without choosing to be an assailant. So obviously, in every case, an assailant is going to be guilty. Okay. So we talked about the city. What about out in the field, where, you might be far away from people? Well, you were given the benefit of the doubt. If somebody assaults you out in the field where nobody's there to hear you, your assailant would die alone by stoning rather than both of you. So in the city, no scream, you both are stoned because both are complicit. in the city where somebody screams, the assailant is obviously a willing victim and chose to sin. The other person was forced to. It was not their free will. The assailant is stoned. The victim is not. In the field, nobody, but there's a possibility that nobody's there to hear you and you're given the benefit of the doubt. And your assailant is stoned alone. All right. So, Angus Stewart and conversation about the two witness rule really tried to present on a silver platter an escape route for the Watchtower to change their policies and maintain a scriptural rationale behind it. Jeffrey Jackson wasn't taking it. His response was that, hopefully sometime in the future he is going to get to ask Jesus how to apply that. It kind of also applies to, if you read it, I'm not going to read it. If you read it though, it applies to murder too. Let's look at this for a second. So if you are out in a field, murder somebody, come back, somebody says, well, what's all that blood on your robe? What in the world happened? Oh, I killed a feral pig. Okay. Maybe pigs were unclean to eat. I don't know why you didn't bring it back. Killed a feral pig. Fine. Victim's wife later finds him trying to figure out why he's not come back from the field, finds a dead man, and boom. Obviously, the dude that showed up with some pretty good evidence on his robe suddenly doesn't look like he slaughtered a pig anymore. But I'd say there's some pretty strong circumstantial evidence. I'm sure there's a little bit more digging that they could do to figure out how the man was killed. What kind of wound did he have? What kind of weapon does this person possess that did it? All right. So it kind of makes sense. You don't necessarily have to have two witnesses to get rid of somebody who is a danger to the life and spirituality of somebody else. All right, I understand why they're doing this in the scripture, but let's look at Watchtower's response, because in the hearing, Jeffrey Jackson told Angus Stewart, I'd like to be able to ask Jesus someday. I hope to in the future. 2 weeks later, they replied, it's a really similar scenario, but it doesn't quite apply. Really similar, but it's not quite the same thing. I don't know why. I will tell you right now, I'm really struggling to see why. We've just hashed out all my rationale. It seems pretty straightforward when you don't try to overcomplicate it and read into it what you want. Let's try and figure out why. Because they published this. Now that it's coming out and everybody's hearing about it, and too many people are hearing about the Australian Royal Commission, in the study edition of the December 2019 Watchtower, they have a question from readers. I'm sure it was a question. It wasn't an issue they had to address. They had a question from readers about Deuteronomy 22, verses 25 through 27. Now, I'm going to claim fair use here because we're discussing this, obviously. We've already gotten multiple opinions going on. Fair use. Questions from readers. I combined the first and the last paragraph. The account at Deuteronomy 22 verses 25 through 27 is not primarily about proving the man's guilt, because that was acknowledged. All right, we talked about that. The law is focused on establishing the woman's innocence. Now, we talked about that. There's the exception. Skipping down to the last paragraph. Hence, even though this law focused on the woman's innocence, the account rightly describes the man guilty of rape and adultery. All right. We can be confident that the judges would investigate the matter thoroughly and render a decision with the standard that God had set out, plainly and repeatedly. Plainly and repeatedly. That kind of tells me that they're sick of talking about this. How are they investigating now? But they did it plainly and repeatedly. Or they discussed it plainly and repeatedly. It sounds a little bit adamant. They referenced a few scriptures. Let's see what they're talking about. Deuteronomy 13:14. You should look into the matter, making a thorough investigation and inquiry, and if it is confirmed to be true that this testable thing has been done among you. All right, so we have, after investigation and inquiry, a footnote. All right, let's check out the footnote, because I want to know what their investigation and inquiry is. Because they said investigate the matter thoroughly. We have investigation and inquiry. We're going to find out how they do that. Deuteronomy 19:15 is the first reference scripture. No single witness may convict. Hold on, I'm losing my place. No single witness may convict another for any error or sin that he may commit. On the testimony of 2 witnesses or 3 witnesses, the matter should be established. Somebody tell me if it doesn't seem an awful lot like they use Deuteronomy 13:14 as a bridge back to the 2-witness rule. It's just a bridge, because they already said in the paragraph, investigate the matter thoroughly and render a decision in line with the standard. And they're being adamant. I had a narcissistic domestic abuse situation that, I happened to be a victim in, and he was really adamant about his beliefs too. He had some crazy screwed up beliefs. But plainly and repeatedly sounds like the kind of tone that he would use, and I'm pretty sure Deuteronomy 13:14 is just a bridge back to the 2-witness rule. All right, second footnote on the investigation and inquiry. 1 Timothy 5:19. Do not accept the accusation against an older man except on the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. Well, damn. Oh, excuse my French. They did go right back to that, didn't they? These efforts. We're going to get to another part here soon. Hold on. We're still going to go through these reference scriptures. All right, second reference from the paragraph. When it is reported to you or when you hear about it, then you should investigate the matter thoroughly. If it is confirmed to be true, footnote, the detestable thing has been done in Israel. Let's go look at the footnotes. All right, reference scripture is John 7:51. Our law does not judge a man unless it first hears from him and learns what he is doing, does it? Well, fair enough. They give him a chance to defend himself. I don't think we should just go out wantonly stoning people to death. I'll take that one. All right, final one. Exodus 20:14. You must not commit adultery. Well, I suppose if you were in the city and you did not scream, you did not commit adultery, according to the law. Well, we all know that's a rule. Because, this law was to avoid being stoned to death when you were an unwilling participant. It does have a footnote, though. The first reference, I'm not going to read all of them. All the other references in this footnote are basically don't commit adultery. It's the only sin that you can do against yourself. Everything else is also a sin against God as well. But the very first one, Genesis 39, 7 through 9. Now, after these things, the wife of his master began to cast her eyes on Joseph and say, "Lie down with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Here my master does not know what is what," because it's not a who anymore, "what is with me in this house, and he has entrusted everything he has into my care. There is no one in this house greater than I am, and he has not withheld anything from me, all except you, because you are his wife. How could I commit this great badness against God?" All right, so of all the scriptures in the Bible about do not commit adultery, because we already know they're using scriptures as bridges, how many of them go back to reference Genesis 39, 7 through 9, where a woman threw herself at a man and he had the integrity and the respect and the fortitude to stand up to her advances? I did not do thorough enough research to answer that question, but it is an interesting question. How many of the scriptures that they could have chosen from that said do not commit adultery refer back to this account of, I think it was Potiphar's wife, throwing herself at Joseph on a daily basis, and him with the integrity and the honor to turn her away every single time? It's interesting, in the Shepherd the Flock of God book, there's actually a part in there that gives a strong inference that if you're assaulted, you're supposed to report that to the elders. And I'm finally understanding now, because it's their job to establish if you were in fact assaulted, or if you were complicit in your crimes. Because that's exactly what a victim needs, is to go through a judicial committee with a bunch of window washers who have to throw down the squeegee and handle this matter right now, because they can't have this uncleanness in the congregation. Suddenly you're a bad thing. Ugh. Oh, here's another thing. We established why the man is always guilty. We're going to trade out man for assailant, because men and women both can assault other men, women, and children. And it has happened. They did not choose to be a part of this. Their free will, the victim's free will, did not tell them, "I'm doing this." In every case where someone forces himself on somebody, I'm finding very few cases, especially in the Bible, where weapons weren't exactly what they are now, where somebody would have been holding a gun to your head, telling you to assault somebody who didn't want to participate. Like, obviously, they're going to be guilty every time. There's a reason for that. But The account at Deuteronomy is not primarily about proving the man's guilt. Now, here's another thing. When they're talking about the man, it's an account. A verbalization or dictation of something that occurred. When they're talking about the woman, it's a law. They did it twice. They refer to it as a law so long as they were talking about a woman. But in the first, the introduction and the summary of this article, it's an account when it's about a man. It's a law when it's about a woman. This, as far as they're concerned, was never meant as anything. This is just a tool for them, basically, to remove the victims and the bad things. It's still a closed system. It's a trap for the victims. Because if I, as a woman or as a victim, were to go and say that an individual assaulted me, am I not inherently admitting to being a part of an act that otherwise would be punishable by death? Oh, but I want to accuse this person? No. The man, or as it should be applied, the assailant, is going to require 2 witnesses. All right. I'm pretty sure that's not the way it's supposed to go. How can a woman or how can a victim come forward knowing, like it's like a trap, being involved in adultery and fornication is punishable by death. By seeking help, you are inherently admitting to what is going to have to be proven as an unwilling act on your part, but to do that, this person needs 2 witnesses. Otherwise, could you not be also accused of false testimony, which is also really bad juju in the Bible? They got this completely wrong, guys. It is completely wrong. It's not just about a man versus a woman. This is about an assailant. Somebody who is taking the option of free will away from a victim. This is about sexist application of law. It's an accounting when it's a man, it's a law when it's a woman. It's a trap. It's a trap for the victims because not only can they be accused of adultery, but they can be accused of slander. Do we not see this basic framework of a story and so many other victims and account sharing things on YouTube and Silent Lambs and just different activist places? And so like that framework is there in all of them. It's insane. They've got this all wrong. And I am livid. They want you to they literally want, if I were assaulted, they literally want me to come and report it to them so that they could have me sit down and go through an investigation and prove to a bunch of people who had to throw down their squeegee to get there that I am a victim. They don't know what the hell they're doing. And it's all a trap. Because they have the opportunity to take it to somebody who does know what they're doing and to establish it with forensic evidence and real and actual trained people. And yet they choose to re-victimize the victims. It's a trap. Oh my God, people, I'm so done. I need to get to work. Y'all have a good one and think about it a little bit. I'll talk to you later.